a forest disappearing at the edge of the desert. On the western rim of Ethiopia's Great Rift Valley sits Desa'a, one of Africa's last dry Afromontane cloud forests. More than 70% of it has vanished in 50 years. What remains is severely degraded, and over 500,000 people depend on what's left. Across the Highlands, Ethiopia loses 2 billion tons of topsoil every single year. So when restoration leaders confronted Desa'a's collapse, they made a decision that defied every instinct. They abandoned tree planting entirely. What they did instead began with a secret hidden inside the clouds. Bare earth stretches across the Ethiopian highlands, a silent witness to decades of relentless soil loss. Each rainy season, torrents carve deep scars into the land, washing away the foundation of life itself. By 2002, researchers with the Ethiopian Highlands Soil Erosion Research System measured an average of 69 tons of topsoil lost from every hectare of cultivated land, year after year. Even after 2 decades of conservation efforts, that figure only dropped to 35 tons per hectare by 2022, a rate still considered catastrophic by soil scientists. When multiplied across Ethiopia's vast highland farmlands, the numbers become staggering, up to 2 billion tons of topsoil stripped away annually. This is not just a local problem. The highlands feed most of the country's rivers and sustain millions of families. As the land thins, rivers turn muddy after every storm, and fields that once yielded plenty now struggle to produce enough. Farmers watch their crops wither as the soil beneath them grows shallow and stony. In some places, fertile ground has vanished entirely, replaced by bare rock and dust. The consequences ripple far beyond the fields. Silt chokes downstream reservoirs and irrigation canals, triggering flash floods and water shortages. Forests once buffered the rains, but with so much tree cover gone, even brief storms unleash waves of erosion. National surveys show that Ethiopia has lost more than 70% of its original forest since the early 20th century. Less than 5% remains, scattered and fragile. The crisis is not theoretical. It is measured in the empty granaries, the deepening gullies, and the shrinking forests that once anchored climate and culture. For the people of Tigray and Afar, and for 500,000 who depend directly on Desa'a, the stakes are survival itself. As the land erodes, so does the hope for a future rooted in these highlands. Yet, buried in this emergency lies a question. If the land continues to vanish, what can possibly hold it in place? Mist drifts across the high ridges of Desa'a, weaving through the battered crowns of juniper and wild olive. For generations, the people here watch the skies, waiting for rain that often failed to arrive. Yet beneath the silence of the cloud forest, a quiet experiment was underway. In 2020, a field team from KU Leuven set out to measure what the eye could not see: water arriving not as rain, but as fog. Using stainless steel grids raised 1.5 meters above ground, the researchers captured droplets from the passing mist. Through months of careful collection, they found that the forest canopy was intercepting far more than a trickle. On average, 342 millimeters of water per year, nearly 2/3 of all moisture entering the ecosystem, came not from rainfall, but from clouds brushing the treetops. During the short rainy season from June to September, fog provided its greatest gift, sometimes delivering over 60 millimeters in a single month. Even in the long dry months, when the earth cracked and rivers shrank to threads, the forest still drew water from the air, enough to keep life going when all else failed. The numbers challenged everything restoration teams thought they knew about dryland. Survival. In Desa'a, it was not the rare downpour that mattered most, but the daily breath of clouds. The leaves themselves became a living net, catching and condensing the invisible rain. KU Leuven's data revealed another truth. Every 10% drop in canopy cover meant a 10% loss in fog water. The survival of the forest depended not just on planting trees, but on keeping enough of the right trees standing to drink from the sky. This discovery reframed the entire restoration challenge. If fog could supply most of the water, the priority was not to plant as many seedlings as possible, but to hold on to every drop the clouds offered. The next question became urgent: how to keep that captured moisture in the ground long enough for roots to find it and for new life to take hold. Men and women stand in long lines, shovels in hand, as the first light breaks over the slopes of Desa'a. Here, restoration begins. Not with seedlings, but with earth moved by human hands. Microbasins, shallow, cup-shaped pits, dot the hillsides by the thousands, each one carved to slow the rush of rainwater and coax it into the soil. Over 3.8 million of these basins now checker the landscape, built almost entirely by local work crews. Each basin measures about 1 to 2 meters across, with a low earthen bund on the downhill side to catch and hold runoff. The ratio is precise. For every square meter of basin, 4 to 10 meters of hillside drain into it, channeling water that would otherwise be lost to flash floods. The labor is immense. A typical team of a dozen can dig 1,000 basins in a month, often with nothing more than iron blades and calloused hands. The cost, when measured in wages and sweat, is just $1 or $2 per basin, affordable only because entire communities join in, treating the work as both necessity and shared investment. Dr. Aklilu Ngusi Makuria, the project's lead, puts it simply, "Without water in the ground, no seedling stands a chance. Our first job is to give the land its thirst back." What these basins accomplish is measurable. Infiltration rates rise sharply, reaching 12 to 18 millimeters per hour under a strong rain. The soil, once hard and dry, now holds moisture 15 to 30% longer into the dry season. When the rains come, water pools gently in each hollow, seeping down instead of racing away. The effect is cumulative. As millions of basins fill and drain, groundwater begins to recover, and the risk of gully erosion falls. Microbasins are only one part of the system. Trenches, bunds, and half-moon embankments follow, each structure designed to slow, spread, and sink water into the earth. But it is the sheer number, 3.8 million, hand-dug, maintained, and monitored by local teams, that transforms a theoretical solution into living change. The work is slow, methodical, and relentless, but every basin is a promise: water held, soil saved, and a future made possible for seedlings yet to come. Percolation ponds lie at the heart of Desa'a's water strategy, scattered like blue mirrors across the lower slopes and gullies. Each is a shallow depression, 3 to 5 meters wide and lined with stone, designed to capture and hold the pulse of stormwater that once tore straight through the land. Instead of racing away, runoff now pools in these basins, seeping slowly into the earth. The engineering is simple but effective. Stone walls prevent the sides from collapsing, while the pond's unlined floor allows water to percolate down, recharging the soil below. Construction blends machine digging with hand-placed rock, a process that keeps costs manageable and maintenance straightforward. Monitoring stations installed after the 2023 rains recorded that these ponds trap, on average, 68% of all stormwater during events exceeding 30 millimeters, far above the efficiency of traditional earthen dams. In a single year, the network of 46 ponds and their feeder channels captured 400,000 cubic meters of water, with the entire restoration system, ponds, basins, trenches, and bunds, holding back a total of 1.7 million cubic meters annually. That is enough to fill nearly 700 Olympic-sized swimming pools, all redirected into the thirsty ground rather than lost to flash floods. Percolation losses, measured at 12% of stored volume, are not a flaw but a feature. This seepage is what feeds the shallow aquifers and sustains plant roots through the long dry season. The rest of the water is released gradually downstream, reducing the risk of sudden erosion and keeping springs alive when rainfall disappears. Hydrological models confirm the impact. After the ponds were built, peak flood flows dropped by 44%, and groundwater recharge rose by 22% compared to pre-intervention years. Even during the severe drought of 2023, soil moisture in the restored zones held steady, buffered by the water banked in these modest reservoirs. What sets Desa'a apart is not just the scale: over 3.8 million microbasins, 20,000 trenches, and hundreds of kilometers of bunds. but the discipline of capturing water first before a single seedling is planted. This approach ensures that when trees do take root, they find a landscape already primed to support life. The numbers tell the story. With 1.7 million cubic meters of water stored each year, the odds of seedling survival and forest recovery rise dramatically, turning the fight against desertification from a losing battle into a winnable campaign. A landscape-scale experiment demands proof, not just promise. In 2025, the Desa'a Restoration Project opened its records to an independent audit by Preferred by Nature, led by climate verification specialist Hernan Zaldivar Schrader. The task: confirm whether millions of trees planted in this battered highland were truly surviving, or if hope had once again outpaced reality. Zaldivar's team combined drone surveys with classic ground transect walks, crisscrossing the slopes to count live stems, measure canopy density, and check for signs of drought stress. This dual approach, satellite eyes above, boots on the ground below, offered a rare degree of confidence. The numbers left little room for doubt. Of the 22.5 million native trees established since 2018, more than 90% were still standing after 3 years, an extraordinary survival rate for any dryland reforestation effort, let alone one tested by conflict and drought. The audit team catalogued not just raw survival, but growth rates, species composition, and evidence of natural regeneration. Their findings set a new biological baseline. Desa'a's restored zones now support continuous canopy cover, with seedlings maturing into saplings at rates far above regional averages. This verification anchors the next chapter: carbon stocks, climate gains, and a living forest that holds its ground against the desert. In late 2020, war swept across Tigray, severing roads and isolating Desa'a from the outside world. For 2 years, supply lines vanished. Tree nurseries ran on what little seed and water could be gathered locally. At the center of the effort stood Yamani Gebru Hagos, the regional manager for WeForest. Even as fighting closed in, he kept his teams moving, organizing villagers to clear silted basins, repair bunds, and patrol the forest edge. When the worst drought in decades arrived in 2023, the true test began. Rains failed, crops shriveled, and many feared the gains of years would be lost in a single season. Yet, in the restored zones, something different happened. Soil moisture probes, checked by community monitors, showed that the ground still held nearly 70% of its water, despite months without rain. Microbasins, trenches, and stone bunds slowed evaporation, trapping what little cloud mist and runoff remained. Springs that had once dried by January trickled on through March. Livestock grazed on patches of green where neighbors saw only dust. Yemeni's crews worked in shifts to clear debris from percolation ponds and reinforce damaged embankments. Even under blockade, they found ways to share tools and swap labor between villages. The water-first system, built for ordinary droughts, now buffered against the extraordinary. Survival was not just a matter of luck, but of preparation. Millions of basins were dug, maintained, and defended by hands that refused to give up. The stress test was passed not in a laboratory, but on the slopes of Desa'a, under siege and sun alike. Atspa Kasai moves among his hives at dawn, the air alive with the hum of bees and the scent of wildflowers blooming where bare ground once stretched. For Atspa, and for hundreds of beekeeping families across Desa'a, the return of moisture and forest cover has meant more than green hills. It has meant full honeycombs and a steady income. Household surveys conducted in 2018 and again in 2024 show a 68% jump in honey revenue, lifting annual earnings from $28 to $47 per household. It is a simple equation: more flowering trees, more nectar, more honey to sell at market. The changes reach beyond the apiaries. For Meazu Gebrahans, a mother of 4, the restoration brought work and dignity. In 2018, only 12% of nursery jobs went to women. By 2024, that figure had climbed to 42%. Women now run seedling nurseries, manage planting crews, and take home wages that support their families through lean seasons. Across 30 villages, the same survey found that average household income rose from $837 to $1,092 a year. More than half of the poorest families, 54%, crossed above the international poverty line for the first time. These numbers are not projections. They are the lived reality of people whose fortunes have turned with the land. The restoration of Desa'a is measured not only in trees and water, but in the hands that now shape a future once thought impossible. Across the Sahel, the challenge is not just to grow trees, but to create livelihoods where land and people can thrive together. Ethiopia's water-first approach stands out because it pairs ecological restoration with rural employment on a massive scale. The same microbasins, trenches, and bunds that anchor Desa'a's recovery are built almost entirely by hand, turning restoration into a source of steady work for local communities. This low-tech, labor-intensive model fits seamlessly with the Great Green Wall's vision for the region, where millions of hectares of degraded land are restored not by machines, but by the hands of those who depend on it most. As the African Union's plan calls for 40,000 hectares of water-first restoration in Ethiopia alone, the Desa'a method offers a blueprint. Every basin dug means both water held in the land and wages earned in the village. Here, the path to continental scale is measured in shovels, not just in trees. By 2030, Ethiopia has set its sights on restoring 40,000 hectares of degraded dry land using the water-first approach pioneered in Desa'a. This target is not an abstract ambition, but a formal commitment embedded in the country's national Great Green Wall program and reinforced by the African Union's Continental Plan. The restoration blueprint calls for millions of microbasins, hundreds of kilometers of stone bunds, and a network of trenches and ponds, all designed to capture and hold water before a single seedling is planted. The policy mandates that every hectare brought back to life must meet strict technical standards derived from Desa'a's experience: dense microbasin coverage, carefully engineered bunds, and rigorous monitoring of soil moisture and canopy growth. The 40,000 hectare goal anchors Ethiopia's contribution to the Great Green Wall, promising not just more trees, but landscapes built to endure drought, buffer against climate shocks, and support rural livelihoods for generations. Desa'a's recovery isn't just a local victory, it is living proof that restoring water before planting trees can transform entire drylands. Today, fog-capturing basins and erosion barriers shelter 900,000 new trees, boost soil carbon, and revive endangered species. As climate extremes intensify, this plant-the-rain-first model stands as hope and a blueprint. Wherever land and life teeter on the edge, what would happen if the world followed suit?